This podcast is supported by Progressive, a leader in RV insurance. RVs are for sharing adventures with family, friends, and even your pets. So if you bring your cats and dogs along for the ride, you'll want Progressive RV insurance. They protect your cats and dogs like family by offering up to $1,000 in optional coverage for vet bills in case of an RV accident, making it a great companion for the responsible pet owner who loves to travel. See Progressive's other benefits and more when you quote RV insurance at Progressive.com today. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Pet injury is an additional coverage and subject to policy terms.
Welcome back to Rams Up, your favorite LA Rams podcast. We are part of the Fans First Sports Network, and you can follow us on YouTube at youtube.com/@RamsUpPodcast. I'm your host, Mark. I'll be joined often by my football guru, Ian, along with a bunch of other friends of the show on occasion. Let's get to it. Hey, welcome back, everybody. Mark from Rams Up here. Another Rams Up update. Although I don't have a lot to share with you, the only news I have is someone on the YouTube channel commented that they saw video from Thursday's practice. That was a practice closed to the public that showed Lyric Jackson in pads, practicing in pads. I suspect there's no contact still. I'm not sure about that. But at a minimum, baby steps for Lyric Jackson, slowly, possibly progressing to getting back on the field and maybe being ready for the opener. We can only hope, but his health is the most important thing, obviously, long-term health. We want him back playing for our Rams, but we want to make sure he is good to go. Don't want him to put his life and limb on the line for W's for our Rams, but man, it'd be nice to have him back in uniform and playing and ready to go because he was a beast last year. So what am I going to do this episode? I thought I would take an early look at how Rams players might shape up as far as fantasy football goes. And, later on, perhaps before the season starts, I'll get an expert, someone else that knows a little bit more than I do, to join us and talk about that exact thing again. But just an early look, I'm going to share with you a little bit of basic research I've done as I prepare for my draft. And I don't pretend to be an expert, just going to throw out what I have found so far about the Rams players and their prospects fantasy football wise. And I kind of keep an eye on the NFC West as a group. I don't want to be trying to, in a 120-minute episode, run down the entire league. There's plenty of sites, plenty of guys out there that know a lot more than I do as far as fantasy football goes. But so we'll talk about the Rams and a little bit about the Seahawks, 49ers, and Cardinals as well. Before I get started, it is episode 792. Getting close to episode 800. How crazy is that? And I'm going to talk about a player who wore number 70. He didn't wear number 792. He wore number 92. And that is a guy that I had forgotten about. And it is David Rocker, defensive lineman. And a bit of a sad story here. David Rocker, poor guy, 6'5", 267 pounds, out of Auburn. Drafted by the Oilers in the fourth round of the 1991 draft, and it didn't go well there. They release him before the season starts. He comes over to the Rams, and I guess he was, I read an article that, an interview that they had with him, and he said, he didn't really want to get to know the Rams players because he was really surprised that he had gotten released by the Oilers, and it was a bit of an unsettling time for David Rocker. And then in that game against the Lions, he was involved in that play where Mike Utley was paralyzed. No fault of his, obviously, but it really changed his life, and he had a hard time dealing with that. Obviously, it was horrible what happened to Mike Utley, but it was pretty devastating for David Rocker too. Not nearly as devastating, but still a lot of mental anguish associated with that event. And there's some articles out there online you can dig into about his personal struggles dealing with that. But he did end up playing for the Rams for a few years. He ended up, how many games did he play? 34 games, 4 starts, 1.5 sacks. Our number 92 for the Los Angeles Rams. Let's get into this fantasy football talk, and I'm going to be referencing data rankings provided by Justin Boone of Yahoo Sports. And I kind of lean Yahoo when it comes to fantasy football. I like their interface as far as league management and all that. Hey, you can go, you can probably find 1,000 different rankings. I just chose one, Yahoo, Justin Boone. We'll be using those rankings, but I think this is all pretty representative. First thing we're going to talk about is defenses, and he has the Rams rated at number 7, Seattle 10, the 49ers 16, and the Cardinals 18. Now, what would I say about that? Now, I think the Rams defense from a fantasy football perspective is getting a little bit of extra love based on potential, and fair enough. But let's not pretend that this defense was that great overall last year. But they did have some big splash plays, pick sixes. Cam Kinchins, Jalen McCullough come to mind. Had a lot of sacks as well, and I'd expect those numbers to go up. But I still think the number 7 ranking's a little bit high. Now, Seattle at number 10, I think that's a really good value if you can get them at number 10, because this defense could potentially be set to go off. They were really good last year. They might have been the best non-playoff defense in the league by some metrics. I'm sure they were. And they continue to build that defense. And Mike McDonald there, the coach, remember he was at DC with the Ravens, so he knows what he's doing. And I think this offense with the changes they've made is going more to a ground control, ground and pound type attack, which could lend itself to some good numbers defensively as well, shorten the game, that type of thing. So number 10, I think is a good value for the Seahawks. Number 7 for the Rams, I don't know. I wouldn't hesitate to draft the Rams at some point, let's say in a 12-team league. Might wait a little bit past number 7, though. But then, maybe it could be a big payoff there if you get them 7 or 8. But Seattle at 10, that seems like a really good value. The 49ers at number 16, they have some questions up front on the interior, in my opinion. And I think they also have some issues in the secondary potentially. And I don't know, their offense, which, defenses feed off of offense and vice versa. They're a bit of an enigma, but 16 sounds about right. Lost some big impact players, but they still have some great players, Joey Bosa, Fred Warner, to name a couple. And then the Cardinals at 18, another team that has really focused on developing that defense in the draft and free agency. But, we need to see it on the field. I don't feel like they have the real impact players like Seattle and the Rams do, and even the 49ers, but overall could be a very much improved defense. I don't think the 49ers or the Cardinals defenses are getting drafted unless they're getting drafted by 49er fans and Cardinal fans, respectively. Rams and Seahawks will both come off the board. Probably, if you're in a 12-team league, probably in that someone's going to grab them at some point, but they will be 2 of the last defenses selected, or at least in the bottom half in order anyways. Now, quarterback, Matthew Stafford has never been much of a fantasy football quarterback. And, Brock Purdy, Kyler Murray, and Sam Darnold, I don't know if any of them are really going to be impact fantasy football quarterbacks this year, but coming in right now, Purdy's at number 9, Murray at number 13, Stafford at number 23, and Darnold at number 28. So let's just take Stafford and Darnold off your board. If you're a Ram fan, go ahead and take Stafford with the 16th pick or whatever. Sure, have at it. But especially with his health concerns, I'm not going to overstate those because I don't want to have it. No bad karma here. He'll be healthy, but I still don't think he'll be a great fantasy football quarterback, especially when you got guys like Kyren Williams carrying the rock. Really good nose for the end zone, obviously. Purdy, the question with him at number 9 seems a little high because I think their wide receiver core is in flux. A lot of questions. If it all comes together, could be a very good wide receiver group. Ayuk comes back from the injury. Pearsall steps up in year 2, plays well. Juwan Jennings is happy and elevates his game a little bit. Demarcus Robinson maybe going to be suspended. I haven't heard anything about that. Purdy, though, that offense relies a lot on CMC, by the way, and Christian McCaffrey. If he gets banged up again, it just has a domino effect on this whole offense. I'm not feeling Purdy at number 9. I don't want any piece of that. And Murray at number 13, his running ability elevates his value as a fantasy football quarterback. But I don't know. I'm just not feeling it about any of these NFC West quarterbacks. Sam Darnold at number 28. Again, they're going to be what they bring Sam Darnold on for. He's a veteran quarterback, reliable, consistent, not too flashy, really good at handing the ball off, and that's what this offense is going to try to do. Get Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker rolling. And Darnold's a perfect guy for that, but want no piece of him in fantasy football. Now, who might be a good value? The 25th ranked quarterback is Michael Penix, and I'm always looking for, take a flyer on somebody late that could just be a really big payoff. And Penix, could be that dude. Could be that dude this year. And he's a guy that I would consider. I would at least give some thought to drafting really late. Just kind of depends on how the draft unfolds. I'm not necessarily targeting him and having him circled on my draft card, but a guy that I just get the sneaky feeling he could pay off real big by the end of the year. Let's talk about the running backs. McCaffrey, last year, the number 1 ranked player overall. This year, the 4th ranked running back. Kyren Williams, number 13, Kenneth Walker, number 14, and James Conner, who always over-delivers, it seems like, number 18. McCaffrey's, hey, if he stays healthy, you're going to have a winning team if you're drafting him anywhere in the first round. But there is that concern. The guy in our league last year, number 1 overall pick, no choice but to draft McCaffrey, and that owner finished in last place. Kyren at number 13, a really good nose for the end zone. We know that. The question there is a little bit of a risk with Blake Corum waiting in the wings and Kyren's fumbling issues. Jarquez Hunter, is he a factor? I don't know. But the 13th ranked running back may be a little disrespectful for Kyren, but I get it. He's a guy that I would certainly, if the draft falls that way, where if he's available at his average draft position, I would take him. I'm not reaching for him, not letting him slip either. Kenneth Walker is a guy that just never really excites me that much, and I think Zach Charbonnet should be getting more touches, and that could obviously hurt his value. But solid running back, just not a guy I'm overly excited about. And James Conner, a guy that has some fumbling issues as well, seems to get banged up a lot. I don't have the data on that. It just seems like he's out a lot. Number 18th ranked running back. Fair enough. If he's your RB2, I think you're looking pretty good. And that's a dilemma, as we all know, in fantasy football. How are you attacking this running back, wide receiver, running back? Or it used to be you had to get your running backs early. I think that's changed these days. And most owners I know are more interested about getting that impact wide receiver. But if you wait too long, you end up with, an RB1 that's pretty good, and your RB2 is a guy that, just not very exciting. Your team can really, your offensive production, fantasy football production can really be hurt. So what I'm getting at here is James Conner is your RB2, you'd be sitting pretty good, I think. But of course, that affects your wide receiver group. It's a dilemma that's never been solved by me anyways. Every draft is a little bit different. Now, is there a running back that might be sneaky good? The 20th ranked running back is Trayvon Henderson. The Patriots drafted him out of Ohio State. And, the Patriots last year, the knock on them was like the slowest team in the league on offense. Ramondre Stevenson, the running back there, nothing on outside to get, to really stretch defenses. They draft Kyle Williams out of Washington State. We've talked about him. Love that guy. And Trayvon Henderson. I think he'll be RB1 there for the Patriots soon enough. And keep your eye on him. I would be, if he's my RB2, I'd be really happy. I'd be taking him ahead of Connor, actually, if it were me. And I have a feeling his ranking is going to ascend as people give this more thought. That's just my guess. And, rookies, sometimes we get overexcited about rookies. Talk about another rookie in the wide receiver group here in a second. But I really like Trayvon Henderson in fantasy football this year. The wide receiver group, the top two in the NFC West are both with the Rams, Nacua at number 5, Adams at number 15. And the problem, in that situation, they're going to dilute each other's value, perhaps, or maybe Adams will elevate Nacua's value, or vice versa. We won't know till the games are played. But Nacua, the number 5 wide receiver, if I'm in the middle of the round, first round, late first, and he's there, I'm probably taking him. Check 2 boxes. I get a great wide receiver and I get a Ram. Now, the knock on Nacua, of course, is the touchdown production's not quite there. And, he gets banged up a lot. Devontae getting up there in years, but 15 sounds about right. Smith Njigba at number 16, and I think he would be higher if not for this change in philosophy, the reworking of the Seahawks offense. I think he's a great wide receiver, and this number 16 is not necessarily throwing shade on him. It's just a reflection of what kind of fantasy football production you're going to get out of the Seattle offense. Marvin Harrison at number 18. We've talked about it as a first round pick, maybe disappointed in his production, but it wasn't like he didn't get nothing done. He's a really good wide receiver, apparently put on some muscle, some weight to deal with bigger cornerbacks, which he struggled with last year. And then Ricky Pearsall at number 38. Again, it's really hard to assess this 49er wide receiver group because everybody has something going on. Every single one of these wide receivers, maybe not Juwan Jennings anymore. I heard he was upset with his contract situation, but that seems to be behind them. Hasn't signed a new contract, but he's in camp and full participation. But Pearsall at number 38, yeah, I guess that's fair enough. And Cooper Kupp at 51 and Ayuk at 59. They both have some red flags. Kupp didn't get the separation last year in a new offense, an offense it's not a Sean McVay offense, right? He's going to get his yards and his catches and his touchdowns, but to what magnitude remains to be seen. So a little bit of risk there, and that's why he's number 51. And Ayuk at 59 due to the injury. He's going to miss some time. And once he comes back, it could very possibly be, if you're, that's always another dilemma. You take guys that are on the shelf coming back from injury and hurt your team for weeks 4 through 6, but the second half of the season, your offense can really take off, but it's still, it's a risky approach in my opinion. And then I shared on here on the screen, if you're listening on the podcast, worth noting that Jordan Whittington came in as their 88th ranked wide receiver, Tutu Atwell, number 103. And, these guys know what they're doing. They're not biased like we are. Maybe we know the Rams better than some of these guys, but I think he's onto something here. Whittington might be the number 3 wide receiver. And as someone said, I think it was our YouTube channel, Tutu Atwell could really just have that same role despite his 1-year contract. A lot of us thinking, we got a number 3 wide receiver that's going to stretch the field, get a bunch of snaps, because Atwell was very productive when he was targeted, just did not get the snaps and the targets. But this is telling me that maybe Atwell's going to be used much like he has been in years past, and Whittington is the guy, or dare I say Konate Mumpfield. No, I think it's going to be Whittington, but there's nothing. I will not discourage you from getting excited about Konate Mumpfield, just not in the fantasy football realm. That usually doesn't work out, and I could be wrong, but I've fallen into that trap. See a guy that you just think is going to be lightning in a bottle in his rookie year, and doesn't usually turn out that way. So, was there a wide receiver under the radar that I would look at, and another rookie? And I focus on these rookies too much, but another Ohio State guy, Emeka Egbuka, drafted by the Bucks, and they're ranting and raving about him. Baker Mayfield loves him, did not blink, said this guy is a stud. He's going to be a big part of this offense. And right away, I think, and they said coming out of the draft, a lot of times, it's funny how that works. You may be kind of, warm on a guy in the draft, and then as soon as you select it, you can like, man, you know what? I wish we had drafted him. This guy is going to knock everybody's socks off, and I think Egbuka is very pro ready, mature. This guy's going to go get it right out of the. Yeah, there are probably two rookie wide receivers that I think are going to make a splash really early. It's Egbuka and Matthew Golden, especially Egbuka. And I wanted Golden over Egbuka, but right now, I think I might be leaning towards Egbuka as my favorite rookie wide receiver, but we'll see how that works out. Hey, you can't go wrong with the Ohio State wide receivers. So let's move on to the tight ends here. And we got Trey McBride as the number 2 ranked tight end, which has surprised me because I think he's a great tight end, one of the best in the league. But, we saw going into that season finale against the Rams, he did not have a TD yet. And I made the call that they're going to do everything they can to get him a TD. And they did. And they almost got him another one. And that interception by Akello, the ball bouncing off McBride's helmet, not his fault. I think, I don't know whose fault it was. Murray getting rid of the ball too quickly, McBride not getting turned around in time. I don't know. Regardless, number 2 ranking for a guy that really struggled in the red zone. I'm not sold on him at number 2, but great tight end. And then there's George Kittle at number 3. I don't feel real good about that either. Getting up there in years, he's got the new contract. He might be their go-to wide receiver early, so there's that. And then there's Elijah Arroyo, number 23 overall. A lot of folks wanted the Rams to draft him, but it was the Seahawks who landed him. And at the 23rd ranked tight end, probably not going to get drafted. And the 2 Rams tight ends, Higbee at 32 and Ferguson at number 33. And by the way, Mason Taylor, another rookie with the Jets, is the 24th ranked tight end. So in all likelihood, Higbee will not get drafted, but I would not be surprised if Ferguson got drafted at the 33rd pick here, 33rd tight end. He's certainly worth more than that. It's just another one of those situations. Do you start him? When do you start him? You can't start him on opening day. He's going to be your number 2 tight end at best. You just got to sit on him. And you're probably going to start him 1 week too late because he's going to finally, start being productive and getting a bunch of snaps and then moving on. He certainly has increased value, but I would be all over Terrence Ferguson very late in my draft for sure. It just depends on how things unfold. And if there's a guy that's enticing to me, it is Tucker Kraft, the 10th ranked tight end. So you could get him as one of the last tight end ones drafted. I'm not sure what round that would be. Depends on how things unfold, but I like me some Tucker Kraft and fantasy football this year. Now we get to the kickers, and worth mentioning that the number 2 kicker overall is ex-Ram Cameron Dicker. He was in the Rams camp, never on their 53-man roster. I think he was competing with Matt Gay. I think that's who it was. And Matt Gay, another ex-Ram, the number 3 ranked kicker. Just thought I'd share that. And I feel like when he was doing his rankings here, he maybe forgot about the NFC West and just ran them off here. Number 17 through 20 are the NFC West kickers. Karty at 17, Moody at 18, Jason Myers at 19, and Chad Ryland at 20. I want no part of Jake Moody. Jason Myers, very good kicker. Tailing off a little bit. I know he's missed some critical kicks over the last year or two, if I'm not mistaken. Josh Karty, solid pick at 17. So if you're in a 12-man league, probably not going to get drafted, but if you want to take a flyer on him, save your last pick for kicker and grab yourself some Josh Karty. have a Karty party in fantasy football every week. Not a bad strategy. And Chad Ryland is actually a decent kicker, but he will not get drafted. And so, hey, let's talk about some boomer bust candidates. And the writer here that I'm working off of, Justin Boone, identified 6 boomer bust candidates, and 3 of them are in the NFC West. Let's go back to the running backs here and look at these running backs: McCaffrey, Kyren Williams, Kenneth Walker, and James Conner. McCaffrey was one of the 3 NFC West boomer bust guys, and do we really need to explain it? The injury concerns, and the other part of it is, Kyle Shanahan saying that they're going to lighten his load, and you never want to hear that as a fantasy football owner, that one of your guys is going to be getting breathers and coming off for entire sets of downs. And Isaac Rendo waiting in the wings there, he's going to be the guy, I think. So obviously some concerns there if you're drafting him. And as I mentioned, our owner last year took him first overall, and that just killed his team. Now, another boomer bust guy was identified was Puka Nacua. And I think there's 3 things at work here. Lack of touchdowns. What's the Davante Adams impact? And he gets banged up a lot because of his style of play. And there's actually a 4th thing: what's going on with Matthew Stafford. But I'm not going to go there. No bad karma here. Let's just stick with the 3 orange flags, shall we call them, not red flags. Nakua's, availability due to his style of play, the Davante Adams effect, and red zone. And the Rams have guys that can get into the end zone: Kyren Williams, Davante Adams, obviously. I expect Terrence Ferguson eventually to supplant Tyler Higbee and be really good in the red zone. So, that's something to be concerned about. And then the other 3rd NFC West guy that's boomer bust is Marvin Harrison. And he was listed as the 36th overall wide receiver, and certainly a boom possibility here. But Bleacher Report, their concern was his quarterback. Kyler Murray delivered just 51% catchable ball rate, a 51% catchable ball rate on throws 20-plus air yards without pressure, which ranked 24 out of 33 qualified quarterbacks. And, there's obviously some other concerns about Kyren. There's some other data here. I'm not going to do a deep data dive here, but if you're hoping Marvin Harrison elevates his game and on the field and in fantasy football, I don't know if Kyler Murray is the guy you want throwing him the ball. You guys all know how I feel about Kyler Murray. Exciting when he's at the top of his game and things are clicking. He's just incredible. But it just goes sideways way too many times. And I've always said I just do not like his body language. And maybe that's totally should be disconnected from his performance or his potential. But just worth noting, don't like his body language from start to finish. It's always bothered me. But that aside, Marvin Harrison could be a top 6 wide receiver, and he could be really disappointing. Putting on that muscle too. How much is that, going to change his game? Could be, could have a negative effect. Could maybe increase his ability to separate from physical big corners, but it could also, hurt him on his vertical routes, slant routes, and route running and all that. So we'll have to see. So that is my early August first take on fantasy football from an NFC West, especially the LA Rams perspective. I hope you enjoyed that. We'll come back one more time, hopefully, and maybe I'll have a guest. I did that last year, fantasy football guru guest, to go over the same topic, focusing on the Rams, of course, or maybe just, who are some steals to be looking at in this year's fantasy football drafts. That's all for now, out here from Rams Up. That's going to do it for this episode. Remember, you can reach us at ramsuppodcast@gmail.com. And don't forget about our YouTube channel. Till next time, keep the horns up, stay safe, and have fun out there.